Welcome back to Unsportsmanlike Conduct here on KALA HD2 on the 106.1 FM dial. It is now our pleasure to be joined here by the new St. Ambrose Athletic Director, Mike Holmes. Mike, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, thanks, guys. I'm looking forward to speaking with you a little bit.
Well, that's great. Got some questions we want to ask you today. Of course, you just started here at St. Ambrose on July 1st. I know it's only been just a short amount of time, but how's it been going for you so far?
It's been a really good vibe. I have the benefit of having some other schools under my belt, and when doing that, you kind of see how things have worked and how things don't work. And what I really appreciate with the St. Ambrose culture so far is, one, the very good coaching staff that we have in place, and kind of having a veteran group there. They kind of get it a little bit, and they get why college athletics can work and how things are funded and their role in all of that, and just the commitment that the university has toward the athletic program. When you've been places where that's not necessarily the case, you can really, appreciate. In fact, when you see a university that's all in like St. Ambrose is, and ultimately we want the student athletes to be able to benefit from that.
What attracted you to St. Ambrose?
Well, I think the first part is just knowing it a little bit. Being from Iowa, I knew the university. I actually had, back when I was in high school coaching, I had a player that was recruited up here, and one of my student managers came up here, and I actually visited them on campus one time, and we went to the local taco joint. I can still remember that, to eat lunch. So I knew of the place, and then when I was a college coach, I recruited it a little bit as well, and the Davenport area anyway. So having some familiarity there and having that under my belt, I guess you don't really appreciate. You guys will know this when you've been at your job, whatever, 30 years, that you develop networks, and there's really no network you can ever develop like your hometown network, or in my case, Iowa. So when Ray made his announcement to split and just handle the coaching instead of the AD duties as well, got some phone calls and people talked to me about that. And then, being out in Ohio, I was developing those relationships. So that's 2 years worth versus all the years I had here in both high school and college coaching. And so that was the main attraction. And then, even then, I wasn't really totally on board till I came and visited. And then there was just a good vibe. And Sister Joan is very clear that she had a great vision for the athletic program. And that I was sold. Then it was just a matter of me selling myself to them. So that's how it all kind of came to be.
When you finally got the call that you were going to be the next athletic director here at SAU, what was your reaction then, now knowing that you were going to be back in your home state? Well,
I told you, I called my wife from the airport when I was waiting to get back on the flight after the interview process. One in which my original flight was delayed coming out, so I don't know if you guys know this, I interviewed in sweatpants for the first part of the first day, so that was just mortifying. But after it was all done, I kind of called her and I said, the place has got it going on, and we got to jump at this if we get the opportunity. And she was in wholehearted agreement with that. And so obviously there was a great sense of just elation, I guess, when we got the phone call, because we get yourself a heart set on something is the phrase that I was certainly in that place. So I consider it to be just one of the best things I've done, and so I just hope I'm worthy of the opportunity.
Now that you have that opportunity, are there any changes you're looking to make for the sporting events, such as more coverage or anything like that?
Yeah, well, specifically, I don't know, because you kind of get the idea of what needs to be done once you're immersed in everything, and I got to get the student athletes back. But I will say this: I was really impressed with the student athletes I did meet during the process. There was some open forums specifically for them, and then I had one interview session with them, and really the same thing kind of came to the surface in those talks, and that was, we've done a great job with our growth, but we also need to pay attention to who's here and making sure that we take care of the kids that are on campus. And I've always been about that. I'm about student-athlete experience. If I have one goal, and this is sincere, it's that if I did interview everybody that left the program after 4 years, would they say that they had a good experience? And if we get, universal yeses, then I'm doing a good job on that. my one I use, and people have heard me talk, and I say this, I want literally the person when they're 35 years old, they have a home and a family, I want them to find a St. Ambrose flag and put it on their front porch because they had such a great experience here. Then we know that we're being successful. So I think, if I'm a student athlete, I want coverage. I want Facebook posts. I want highlight reels that go on the website. I want coverage of my games so that if I'm from away, my family and my friends can see my games. I want people attending the game so I have a good environment. So all of those things that's just a baseline. We're going to do that no matter what and try to make it the best experience we can. As for the changes we make, it's almost, in 2 weeks I already have a feel for some of the things I want to do on like an administrative level, but I also want to get kids on campus here. We're going to do follow a model from the NCAA, which is a really good model regarding student advisory committees. So I'm going to have a student group that's going to advise me on things where we get representatives from all of our sports. We meet regularly, and then we can kind of discuss issues. And because sometimes you don't know what you don't know until somebody points it out. So we got to kind of see the operation go before we make those decisions.
I remember when you came here to visit, like you mentioned, and you talked about your coaching experiences and then how you got into the AD level. Then was being an athletic director always the goal towards the end? Because we know, if I remember correctly, coaching was something you always wanted to get involved in.
Yeah, it was never the goal, honestly. I can't believe I stumbled into this, but what really happened was providential in Maine. I got the coaching job, and part of the coaching job was the athletic director, where I'd had coaching jobs where I was a teacher and coaching jobs where I was a dean of students. And so I just kind of stumbled in. I said, okay, I'll go do the best I can at that because it's part of coaching. And if you would have asked me 10 years ago, well, how are you going to retire? What are you going to be doing? I would have said I would still be coaching. But one thing, travel in Maine will change your mind about that a little bit because you're recruiting and you're traveling to Boston and New York and everywhere else. And it was true. This is true. I was on a bus coming from Vermont back to northern Maine, and it's like 2 a.m. and I look at my watch and it's going to be 2 more hours on the road Tuesday night, and I got to get up and work tomorrow morning. I was thinking there's got to be a better way to earn a living than this, and it just so happened I really started to enjoy the athletic director part in that main gig that I was kind of thrust into. And so then once I kind of got the, I guess, adrenaline rush that you can get from that part of the job, then I started to actually seek that, and that's what led me to Franciscan University and then ultimately here. And so I think that, God has a plan, and sometimes we don't know what the plan is, but once we look in the rearview mirror, we say, oh, that all makes sense, and I'm really happy to be what I'm doing right now.
You talked about how important it is for the student-athlete experience. How much do you think being a student-athlete helps prepare you for the future?
Well, the data would tell you that it is immensely valuable. Just what you have to do to manage your time and the discipline involved with athletics. And really, one of the great parts about athletics is sometimes people telling you things you don't want to hear, which people get kind of sheltered from anymore. And so all of those things, they prepare you for the workforce, just being competitive and getting goals and doing what it takes to reach those goals. Now, it might not be getting up and taking a run and lifting weights at 6 a.m. in the morning. It might be, I got to buckle down and do. For me, my current level of that is report. I hate to do reports, but when you're an athletic director, do paperwork and budgets are part of the deal. And so the discipline just to say, I need to get that job done to do what I'm supposed to do, having a role, when you're on a team, you have a specific role. Tell me an offensive lineman isn't somebody you want to hire, because those are the most selfless people on a football team who never get any credit. But if they don't do their job, then your team's not going to be successful. And so I just all of those things are wrapped up into athletics. National data tells us that small college athletes, they do better in school. They are more employable. They have a higher income on average. And so, what's there not to like about that particular experience?
You coached at a number of junior colleges before you went off to Maine. When you went off there to Maine and then you went to Ohio, Did you expect to be there long term, or was it just wait and see how this all plays out?
The coaching part was, to be honest with you, that was always step by step. Hey, we're trying to try and move up the ladder as quickly as we can and as efficiently as we can. That's why if somebody actually one of the student athletes made the most observant question that I had when I was here, and that was, well, your resume, you seem like you've been a lot of places, and so are you going to be sticking around? And I told him, if you look at the resume, it was Class 1A in high school, then 2A, 3A, 4A, junior college, 4-year college, then to an athletic director. So it's all been stepping up the ladder. But honestly, Ohio was meant to be the retirement place. And then this thing popped up, and like I said, back to networks and how important your network is. That's what kind of brought me here. So the goal again is that this is designed to be the retirement place. I mean, I'm not 25 years old anymore, and my kiddos are in grade school, and we love the Quad Cities. Believe it or not, one of our criteria my wife and I had when we're having those discussions 10 years ago, where we want to end up. We said a city with a minor league ballpark, because those are, you can get around in a place like that, but there's enough amenities in a city like that where you feel like you're in a city. So this obviously meets that criteria, puts us right between family members on both sides. One set in Des Moines, one set in Indianapolis, and back where we were married, which was in Iowa. And so I don't see any reason this isn't the lifetime place.
Ray's been the AD a long time here and done many great things. Does that help you at all coming in now?
Yeah, if you're not intimidated by that, then it's really a good thing. So that can be kind of intimidating. Again, my first interaction with Coach was I wanted him to recruit one of my players. I was coaching high school in Ottumwa, and he was here. And I asked him to recruit one of my players, and so that was the first time. So he's been at it longer than I have. He obviously has been lifetime at St. Ambrose. And so those things, I guess I'm more in awe of that than anything else, that just what he's bringing to the table as a resource. And then you got a guy like him who's the way that he is, which is how can I be helpful versus I'm going to scrutinize everything this new guy does. It's been awesome. So I think we've had a pretty good feeling. And since I've been in it so long as well, I think he knows that I'm not going to come in here and feel like I have to make change for change's sake just because I'm not Ray. I'm going to really just try to not break what he's done. And obviously there's different strengths that we both have that we hope that I can use him and then bring my strengths to it from seeing things from other perspectives as well. To try to, again, final goal is increase the student-athlete experience.
Going through the transition with Coach Ray, now that he will no longer be the AD here, but still will be very much involved, such as coaching basketball, teaching in the College of Business. How did that transition go for you guys when you were making the change here?
I think maybe the benefit of it was the fact that I was announced, I can't remember when, but several months ago. So we had that really nice buffer time where I was still, grinding things out at Francisco, trying to take care of some things. But like, for example, when the new esports position came available, Ray gave me a call. Here's what's going on. So he was still piloting the ship, but then I was getting some input. And so we kind of made that slow transition over some issues that came up when I was waiting to take the job. And then even better, our house wasn't ready when we moved here. And so I was living, on campus in a campus house, waiting for our house. I hadn't taken the job yet, but then I could come over, talk to Ray. So, I can't imagine a smoother transition and time period that we had to make that. So I think it was pretty seamless. You'd have to ask him. Maybe he's got a different thought, but I thought it went perfect. And like I said, he's been awesome just as far as being helpful and just basically throwing the reins to me and saying, go get them.
How would you describe your time at your last stop at the University in Ohio, and what type of things can you take there that you're going to carry over here to St. Ambrose?
Yeah, so it really was a very different situation, but I think in all it's good. So just a quick snapshot of Franciscan. It's a 10-year-old NCAA Division III program, and that's very, very young for a program. Like all small colleges, they're a little bit of a fear that athletics would change the culture for the worse. Small college isn't University of Kentucky basketball. We're not taking ACTs for people. People are going to class. We're not having sexual assaults every other day. And so sometimes the perception, though, is not that, though. There's a misperception about that. And that's why I would never go beyond small college, because this is athletics in its pure form. The Division I's that's a cesspool. So that was one of our challenges there, was convincing people that advancing your athletic program is not necessarily a bad thing. So there's a lot of battles to be fought there. Having done that was really good, because as maybe people don't think about this, but an athletic director, you got to deal with facilities and admissions and business and faculty and all of those departments, and you've got to be a liaison there. And so at Francisco, we fought a lot of those battles because we needed to do that at the time. But what that does when you're having that kind of conflict is it at least gets you in the head of those people that you're working with now. All of a sudden you come into a place that really has fought those battles and is all in on athletics. So you've advanced past those, in the trenches kind of fights, to now just taking the pieces of all of that to advance. And so anytime you come from difference, and the University of Maine had its own challenges, just being on a recruitment level. If you're on the northern border of Maine with Canada right next door, literally 5 minutes, and you're getting 200 or 125 inches of snow each year, and you're an independent, you've got a tough recruiting gig. I mean, that's about as tough as it gets. And so we had to be we had to be thoughtful about our recruiting policies and our practices and what we would do and what supports we would add. So you take all of those challenges and fights, and I think now that I can bring those here, rely on Dan Tomlins of the world and Ray Shovelings of the world, and all of our coaches have been here for such a long time who know the St. Ambrose culture, plug those things, merge those together. Now we, again, advance the program along.
We talked about your journey, how you've moved up and throughout all the high school rankings, and then you finally get to the college level. And then when you go out to Maine, you did a lot of things out there, such as getting them into a conference. Now that you come here to St. Ambrose, where pretty much it seems like a lot of things are now all set in place, does that make it a lot easier now for you, now that you've started here a couple weeks ago?
It's this is going to sound weird. I'll try to explain this. It's almost harder in a way. So let's take elementary teaching. If I'm a first grade teacher teaching kids to read, I can very easily see the progress of what I'm doing in the classroom every day. But I get to sixth grade, it's a little bit different. How do I easily measure the progress of my students? So it might not be quite as apparent. So there's a little more of a challenge. It's a little more nerve-wracking, honestly, to be someplace that's pretty well established, has a lot of good things going, where that's not going to be so obvious. You get somebody from an independent into a conference, that's a big win, and that's an easy win. Franciscan had a similar thing. We were in a conference where it was very geographically non-conducive to students, and so we moved that in 2 years into the President's Athletic Conference, and that was a big win and a big splashy win. So not quite so easy here to, number one, it can be like an umpire. You can notice a bad one because you'll see, I don't want to come break something. But noticing progress, I guess, is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. But having done that in the previous two stops, I think that something will pop up as kind of an obvious thing that we need to deal with, and then we'll do that. And I guess if our coaches and student athletes feel like, hey, we took another step, when Holmes came on board, we took what was good and we took another step forward, then I guess I'll call that success. I don't know what that's going to look like exactly, but that'll be the goal.
How much did you enjoy being a basketball coach, and that experience you had as a basketball coach? Are you going to take that, and does that help you have that perspective of a coach now as an AD?
I loved it. I mean, like I said, I didn't think I was ever going to do anything else, and I just loved every minute of it. And the greatest thing about coaching, and I think most coaches would concur on this, is just the relationships that you form. So that was, of course, going to be the thing that I really wanted to overcome, is missing that relationship. And so our student athletes here are going to find that I like to get out to practices. I like to talk to kids. I like to have one-on-ones and develop those. Where I was really concerned that would be a missing element, I think at Franciscan I was able to do that. I knew about all of our athletes, had conversations with them, kind of developed those same, and it was kind of nice because I didn't demand. I wasn't the guy who was deciding their playing time, so I was always I could be the good guy, and so that was kind of nice. And then I knew if I made a good decision, it would affect, in my case, there are 385 kids here, over 800. If you make a good decision, it affects that many kids instead of just your 12 or 15 on your basketball team. So maybe the one thing that's kind of missing out is that competitive. I will say this, and I played tennis too, so I'm not saying one sport's better than the other, but there's nothing like a basketball game that's tight, where there's a good crowd, where one basket changes the lead and then another basket changes the lead back, and it gets to the point in the gym where it's so loud you can't even communicate anymore. Man, you don't get that in the athletic director's office very often, but I can now just kind of go enjoy those games from the sideline, and again, if I can have a relationship with the student athletes and get to know a lot of them. 800 is a lot more than 375, but we're gonna try to get out and know each and every one of them before it's all said and done. That part I can still kind of keep my toe in the pool, so to speak.
You mentioned how you have kids and that they're still in grade school. When you make the move, such as coming here, of course, your family has to move with you. When they were supporting you, how did that make you feel? Did it make you feel really good that you have their full support, that you're okay with making this move? And of course, like we mentioned already a couple of times, this being your home state.
Yeah. My kiddos might be too young and oblivious to know any better, so it's probably different moving a 13-year-old than I have 7-year-old twins, so when we made the announcement, they were 6, so they were kind of go with the flow kind of kiddos, they might have their 1 or 2 days where they say, I want to miss the house, or I have some friends here, but they were good to go. Now my wife has been the saint in all of this, so you got to imagine that this poor woman has, we counted, we're in our 6th house now in 12 years of marriage. She's been in all sorts of crazy places, northern Maine and Ohio Valley and Creston, Iowa, and has just kind of adapted to all that. And you got to remember her career too. Now she's a teacher, and they get about the biggest shaft of anybody because their experience doesn't carry forward. They a lot of times have to go back to the beginning, and maybe they get 5. She's a 20-year teacher, and so she gets 5 years of experience, so she's the one who's probably had to sacrifice the most, and she's been a trooper every step of the way to do that. And I hope that from my end it's kind of paying off, that she feels like we're kind of moving up, and that this is a great place to land. But it is a very perceptive question that the families are the ones that really they're the ones who kind of get the raw end of the deal in some of these advancements. But so right now we're unpacking boxes and taking the next step, and so they've been great about it.
You talked about how you want to provide a great student experience for the student athletes. What do you hope to instill these young athletes in them that's going to last the rest of their lives?
Well, I think that there's a responsibility. So your generation is what gets, you got to get tabbed as a little bit, and sometimes unfairly, is they just expect things to be handed to them, and they don't have. But so again, back to your question earlier on how student athletics does for somebody. From my end, we want to provide such a good experience for them, but that there's a quid pro quo to that, and that is you have responsibilities for that too. We are paying the coaches, we're paying for your travel, we're paying for your meals on the road, we're getting your uniforms and everything else. So there is a bit of a responsibility, and that is you are visual representations of the university. You're going to other places with St. Ambrose on your chest. You're having little kids in the community come watch you or be at your camps. That's a responsibility, and you can't go around acting like a fool and expect that we're going to just wipe off the dirt from our hands and say, well, that's okay. You got to be worthy of that type of resources that we're committing to you. And we're gonna talk to our student athletes about that. And if they embrace that, then again, they're going to get all the benefits that come from being disciplined and being part of something that's bigger than yourself. And basically, and I always said this to my guys, so you guys probably think this is crazy. I made my basketball players shave. And so you got to be clean shaven. You're all going to wear white socks. Nobody's going to wear sleeves. There's going to be headbands, So, and we said to them, some of you will not want to do that. And that's the point, is you're willing to do something you don't want to do for a greater cause, and there's probably no greater teacher and no greater character builder than that when you decide, hey, these other people are more important than myself. And that's going to make you a better parent. It's going to make you a better husband or wife. It's going to make you a better in your relationships with your other parts of your family. And that's kind of what I think it's all about.
Well, Mike Holmes, thank you so much again for being here with us today. We really appreciate you giving your knowledge and input.
Yeah, great, guys. I mean, very, very perceptive questions. And so I just think it's such a nice thing that we have this on our campus. And again, it just gives our student athletes another place to kind of be recognized. And you did a nice job. You're well prepared. I mean, goodness gracious, very, very nicely done.
Well, thank you again, and we always appreciate the input, as always. We are going to take a quick break here on Unsportsmanlike Conduct. We'll be right back.